Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons at DC. This is Monday, April 29th. Goodness sakes, we're just about finished with April. This year is just flying by, right? We sat down at the beginning of the year, we made all of our plans. We were going to say to ourselves, man, look, we've got all these things we're going to do in this year, and then look at that. 4 months has just gone by. So if we're planning on getting something done this year, we probably ought to get after it, right? We're running out of daylight to get it done, but we're here. We're live right with you, just like we always are, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7, right after Pratt on Texas on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, and then coming to you on our social media pages. And we're coming to you. This show that we do here is made for people who are trying to get information about being healthier. That's what we talk about. We talk about health. We're trying to help you become healthier, and so that you can live a life worthy of the calling you have received. That is my mission. That is what we try to accomplish on this show. And so that's what we're talking about. So if you have something that you would like to talk to us about, I asked the question of several patients today, hey, what's on your mind when it comes to health? And that's going to be our show tonight. Usually we do take health to church, but the sermon didn't really fit what we were trying to talk about. That's not, let me say it. Let me still say it that way. My preparation for the sermon to tie it into health is going to take longer than I prepared for this evening. So it's not that it didn't apply by any means about what we're talking about, but it is something that it was a subject that I need more time to study. So that we're not going to do that tonight. So I've been asking some patients throughout the day, hey, what's on your mind with health? And those are some of the topics that we're going to come up with tonight and we're going to talk about. So that's the show. So if you guys want to stick around, we can talk about that. One of them was a really good question. It may take up most of the show, but it was a really good question about degenerative knee problems. So the person has degenerative joint disease in the knee, and there's bone on bone. I really want to talk about what that means. And I want to talk about the thought on that and how that's confusing to a lot of people. But so that's what we're going to talk about. But I wanted to share with you a pretty good video that I watched this weekend. I was listening to Jordan Peterson talk, and he was talking to a guy that I thought was really cool, because once he walked through it, and I don't know, it was probably an hour into it. The guy was from Lubbock. Actually, he was from Slayton, and that's the whole thing. Let me see if I can find it right quick, because I just wanted to share it with you in case you guys ever wanted to go. There it was, right there. This is called "Building an Empire and Making Snow White." Because I was trying to do a little research on Snow White, because Jordan Peterson does a fantastic job of kind of tying in some of those stories and how stories are told and what stories mean and why we have stories and how important stories are. And so there was a specific reference he made to Snow White, and I was wanting to know about that, kind of find out, get some more depth. So I went looking for it, and what I found was on the title it says, "My dream is to make $1 billion mistake," and it'll make sense. But building an empire and making Snow White, and Jeremy Boring is who it was, and Jeremy grew up in Slayton, right here outside of Lubbock. And it was really cool, because he was just talking about all the things he'd done in his life and the places he'd gone, and they're creating this whole new network for children, and to make children's movies, because Disney's gone off the rails and trying to be as woke as possible and introduce all this garbage to our kids, and so Jeremy Boring is they're creating a whole new children's whatever it's called, production company, so they could do shows for kids. that has some foundational principles in it. And so they were talking about Snow White a little bit and the stories and how they go. And then Jeremy said, yeah, he said a lot of this stuff I got from the Garza Theater down in Post when I was growing up. And he was describing Lubbock, and he was trying to tell Jordan Peterson this, or West Texas. He wasn't describing Lubbock. I don't mean to be insensitive to people from Slayton. He was describing Slayton and West Texas, which is right here in our area, for you guys that are watching the show and you're not from Lubbock. But that was a really good conversation. And another one, I watched another one. Look, Leslie and Caitlin had been gone since last Wednesday. They went to a bachelorette trip with lifelong friends, and Caitlin's the one of the maid of honors in this wedding. And so they were gone down to Rosemary Beach, Florida. And they just couldn't say enough good things about that place. If you guys need a place to go, then you want to try to get away. Leslie said, hey, if you're trying to go on a vacation and you want to go somewhere where it's quiet and not a lot going on, you don't have not a lot of shopping and a lot of stuff going down there, just a place to get off and go to the beach. She said it was beautiful. It was mostly private. And Rosemary Beach, Florida, I believe is where they were. So anyway, because they were gone, I got an opportunity to do a lot of work in the last 5 days. And not that I don't do a lot of work normally, but the second video I saw was on childhood trauma resolved. And it was Dr. John Deloney. And I actually think that Dr. John Deloney is from Lubbock. Let me look this up too, because I think my brother asked me one day if I knew who he was. He didn't say that he, on this podcast, that he was from Lubbock, but my brother had asked me if I knew. Yeah. Very impressed with him. Just read his bio. Texas Tech grad, moved from Lubbock in 2018. Yeah, John Deloney. That's what it was. So it was so cool. It was like two guys talking to Jordan Peterson about life, and both those guys just had major Lubbock ties right there. So if you want to hear, but not that I care where those guys are from, the content was really good. And the content was really good in communication and understanding. And so I know you guys are busy throughout your day and you got a lot of stuff going on. And you don't think about all the things that I think about when it comes to health, because I don't think about all the things you're doing on a daily basis. I'm just thinking about health pretty much all day long. And these are just good videos. If you want to watch them, they're good videos. The John Deloney video is 1 hour and 42 minutes, and the Jeremy Boring video is 1 hour and 40 minutes. And so usually I'll put those on when I'm working on something, and I'll just listen to them as they're going through there. And then if there's something I want to really pay attention to, I'll just run them back. And that's part of the reason that we try to set the format up of this show. Someday I'll make it better, but the format of this show is supposed to be so that we can talk about things, so that it's not a typical radio show where you've got 9 minutes and then you got commercials, and then you got 9 minutes and then you got commercials. We try to do it to where we actually do 25 or 26 minutes in each segment, so that we can try as hard as we can to map out some thoughts. And so let's just get to the thoughts that we're trying to map out tonight, because but I did want to share those videos with you. So I asked a few people throughout the day, just what's on your mind when it comes to health. And I want to show you how these conversations lead back to the same fundamental things that we talk about every single day on the show. And you could just see how all the pieces fit together. And so I had several comments. And if you guys, I was going to say this a while ago, if you guys have a comment and you want to send it in, it's 806-794-0400 is our text line. 806-794-0400. You can send me a text. If you're listening to me on the radio and you got a question, you can send it to me, or you can send it to me on any message on Facebook. I should be able to get those during the show. If you have a topic, if you've got something that's on your mind and you just want to talk about it tonight, that's what this show is about. So if you've got something and I'm capable of answering it, then I'll try to answer it for you. Um, so I just mentioned it, and there was some really glaring, not glaring, revealing. There was some really revealing answers to the way people answered the question. The partially by not answering the question. And what I get it, and I got to get better at sharing it. But I get it with you that the majority of your day is not thinking about your health. A lot of you guys that are tuning in, if you tune into a show like this, you've got some interest in health. You're trying to learn something about health, but most of the time, you're thinking about whatever it is that you had to do. If you're teaching school, you're probably thinking about teaching school. If you're teaching school and you have a husband and kids at home, you probably are thinking about your husband and your kids, probably thinking about your kids first. And then you're probably thinking about, maybe you're thinking about your husband. Hopefully he's up there somewhere. And maybe you're thinking about, or your wife, if you're a male school teacher. I didn't mean to be sexist right there. Either one of you are thinking about your spouse, if you have one. And then you're thinking about what's going on with the kids. And then you're thinking about what you got to get to baseball practice afterwards, and who's going to pick up this one, and where are we going to run for that, and how are we going to. It's like, I think probably the majority of your day, you're probably not thinking about health. If you work at a bank, if you work at one of my guys works at a tech company here in town. He's busy. He's like, man, I've been busy all day long, and it just got more exciting and more exciting and more exciting as we went throughout the day. And he was talking about how he's got a stand-up desk, but he doesn't know if he could stand up all day long or sit down or something. And so the first part, when I ask people, what are you thinking about today as it relates to health? I understand that a lot of you are not thinking about anything when it relates to health. So you need someone who thinks about it, who works for you, who can share information with you so that you'll know what to do. That's the first thing that came up when I was talking about that. The next thing that came up was one of the ladies said, well, I can't think of anything right now. She said, if you wouldn't have asked me, then I probably could have told you 100 things. But right now in this moment, I can't think of anything right now. And I said, well, okay. I said, what's happening is your left brain is trying to answer the question, because your left brain is very competitive, and your left brain wants to, I got it, don't tell me, I got it, don't tell me, I got it. And your left brain jumps ahead of your right brain. But your right brain is the wise, patient side of your brain, and the right brain says, I've got this whole list of things that you could talk about, but the left brain's like, nope, no, I got it. And we can't think of anything to say because the left brain is where you do your language, but what you're going to say comes from your right brain. So your left brain doesn't really have an answer. And so it was eager. It was very eager and very competitive, and it wanted to answer the question, but it didn't have anything to say. It was waiting. Your right brain was waiting for your left brain to hush so that your right brain could tell it what to say. So that was another it was kind of a side, really. It was not the intention of the question. It just happened to be an extra little gem that we got right there, because it was like, okay, when you're having a hard time thinking, if you're trying to remember something and you're in the middle of a test, or you're doing a speech, or you're trying to remember something, if you can calm yourself down, just relax for just a bit. Just take in the answer, the question. Just take in the question and just think about it for a second, and try to keep your left side calm. And you can't necessarily keep one side calm or the other, but you can keep yourself calm. And if you do that, you'll remember what you wanted to talk about. It will start to come back to you. That's just an extra. that's not really what I was talking about. I just, those two things, the two things, when I ask the question throughout the day, the two things that are super common is, number one, I don't have an answer for you. There's nothing I could think of. And number two is like, well, I had some things I could think of, but I can't remember what they are. And those are kind of a common theme when you ask somebody about health. So those two things, I thought I'd share that with you because that's kind of what's happening. And if you're trying to think of stuff, then that is important. But earlier, one of the subjects that came to and it was a pretty good, well thought out answer is, well, I want to know the difference between a recumbent bike and a treadmill and walking just outside in relationship to my knees that are degenerative. And because my medical doctor is telling me that they don't want me walking because my knee is bone on bone. That's one thing right there. Then my knee is bone on bone. They don't want me walking. And so what am I supposed to do? Can I ride the recumbent bike? And I said, well, have you had your knees replaced? And she's like, no. This one's bone on bone. She pointed to her left knee and she said, it's bone on bone, but I don't have time right now. It'll probably be another 2 years or something before I get, but based on her age and what's going on in her life, she said it'd probably be 2 or 3 years before she gets that knee replaced. So they're trying to get her by that 2 or 3 years. And so they made the recommendation not to get on a treadmill and not to go for a walk. They don't want me walking, is what she said. They said I could do a recumbent bike. Okay, let's break that down. Let's break down that whole conversation right there in all the little parts and pieces that I think that you might consider listening to on that, because you got to. I would present for consideration that where it starts is in the brain. You don't have degenerative knee disease in the knee first. You have degenerative knee disease in the brain first. And that is a hard concept to understand. But your brain is what is you got to keep your brain healthy. It's just absolutely vital that you got to keep your brain healthy. That's why you guys know that I'm really not a fan of Botox, and I'm really not a fan of burning your nerves. It's not, in my opinion, a good idea. Botox especially. Botox to me is comes from two areas. It comes from the beauty world or whatever, where they don't want to have wrinkles. Okay, let's set that aside because that's a totally different thing. I'm not talking about it when it comes to that. I'm talking about it when it comes to your nervous system first. And then what is the doctor trying to do? If the doctor's giving you Botox injection, I had a patient today that told me that she gets 30, every 12 weeks, she gets 30 something injections in her head for her migraine headaches, because she's never been able to find anybody that could give her a better solution than that. And it gives her a solution. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 30 something injections of this toxin, right? Well, it calms it decreases the amount of intensity. I don't want to get off into the Botox. My point of it is the person that makes the recommendation for you to get Botox as injections in your skull to help with your headaches is giving you the best advice that they know how to give you, I think. I would default, maybe they're not, maybe they're punks. I don't know who they are. But I would just say that most of the time, the doctor is trying to come up with a solution to your problem. I think that's fair to say that. The problem is the doctor has exhausted all of their tools in their toolbox, and they don't have anything else but drugs or surgery, and you don't qualify for surgery, so they're going to give you drugs. That's That's the fundamental problem that goes on right there. It's not that you don't have a solution. It's that the person that you're going to see doesn't have your solution for you. You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place. That's not what happens to us on a daily basis. What happens to us is we go into the doctor, and then the doctor tells us, here's an option. And because we don't think about health, and because we don't have a good fundamental base to base our health philosophy on, and because we are supposed to trust our doctor, then we end up taking Botox injections in our skull just so that we can quit having migraine headaches. I would just present for consideration that you're in the wrong place. That doctor has exhausted everything they know to do. And now what you've got is Botox injections. I think if they had a better thing to do, they would offer you something else. But that's not really their thing. I mean, they're not going to go much further than that. So they figured out, well, we'll kill all the nerves in the head. And remember how important that is, because it's a string, right? Your nerve is a string. I don't know if you can see this string, but this wire. Here's one end of it, and here's the other end of it. And they're attached. Let's just say this is a nerve, and it's attached to two different places. When you burn the nerve on this end, you don't just affect this end. As a matter of fact, in the brain, let's do it this way. Let's take this string we got here, which is my cord. Let's do it like this. It's coming from the brain and it's going down to the body somewhere. And we're going to burn the bottom end of it that's in the body. But where is the other end of it? It's in the brain. How did you feel the pain? The pain was where? Registered where? The pain when your knee hurts, where is it registered? In your knee or in your brain? It's in your brain. It's not in your knee. It's in your brain. Your brain maps that nerve back to your knee, but it's your brain that does the mapping. It's not your knee. Your brain tells you, oh, my knee hurts. How does it know that? Because it's following this cord from your brain down to your knee. It's following that nerve. That's how you register the pain that's coming from your knee. Okay? Now, let's inject it with the nerve burning solution, and let's burn the nerve in the knee. Where did the pain stop? The pain stopped in the brain. Why did the pain stop in the brain? Because we've destroyed the ability of the nerve to fire into the brain. Okay, what does that have to do with the brain? I mean, you guys answer that question for me. What do you think would happen? What do you think happens on both ends of you ever sprayed Roundup? Please don't do that anymore, but if you do, don't get it on you. That stuff is not good for you. You ever sprayed Roundup on a dandelion? On the leaf of a dandelion, and then it kills the dandelion? Why did it do that? Because the poison went down into the root. It didn't just kill the leaf of the root of the plant, it killed it in the root. Why? Because it traveled through there, right? Same thing happens when we burn a nerve. We burn the bottom, it affects the top. When you burn the nerve, it affects the brain. There's no question about that. It changes brain function. And if you don't care about brain function, then you don't really care about whether or not you burn the nerve. Now, I totally understand that sometimes what you are looking for as the consumer, as the person who's in the pain, what you're looking for is a solution to your problem. And you don't really, that's not true. I was going to say you don't really care what it is if you're in so much pain, but you do care what it is, but you're willing to trade. The more pain you're in, the greater the pain that you're in, the more you're willing to trade for a bad solution. You just want to get out of the pain. Okay, fair enough. That's fair. But if the solution is to destroy the nervous system, you're in the wrong office. Unless you've just Man, if you've exhausted everything else, well, the patient tells me, well, I've been to chiropractors before. And I said, well, did anybody fix that head tilt that you got that leans to the right? No. Did anybody address that cervical curve that's completely straight? Nope. Did anybody address that atlas that's sitting crooked? Nope. Are you taking fish oil or turmeric? Nope. Okay. You've never been in an office that's given you the solution to your problem, and you've never been in an office that has enough frequency to get you well. And so your alternative is to go try to burn your nerves. Okay, I got off on the wrong thing. I did want to talk about that, but I was trying to talk about what's going on with the knees. So when we get back from the break, because we're going to take a break on the radio, when we get back from the break, I'll finish the knee problem. But the solution to both of those issues, the migraine headaches and the Botox, is the same solution. So let's take a break. We'll be right back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation, 987radio.com, and the Live 365 app. We got us all over the place. So we'll be right back right after these messages. It's a hard concept, and it took me about 20-something years to have somebody teach me the concept that degenerative joint disease starts in the brain. And you're going to say, especially if you guys are smart, you'll be saying something like, oh, that's not true. Like, come on, it's got to happen in the knee. But it's like, no, keep mapping it backwards. Tell me how your knee got degenerative. Well, my knee got degenerative because I'm heavy and I just got too much weight on my knee. Okay, what is it, both knees or just one knee? Well, it's both knees. Okay, so you're legitimately coming on. But why did the knee deteriorate? Because the joint's not moving properly. Why isn't the joint moving properly? It's the two reasons, or the joint's not moving properly and it's got the wrong chemistry. And so what is the cause of those? And you can just map it and keep mapping it and keep mapping it. And what you're going to say is, well, my foot dropped and then my knee turned in and then I walked with my knee all crooked okay, that's very well. What caused that to happen? Just keep backing it up and you'll back it up into your brain. So your knee problems, your joint issues, your knee problems are related to how your brain is functioning. So it's super important. So why now we've been told I can't walk. I'm not supposed to walk because I've got bone on bone in my knees. And I'll as soon as this commercial's over, we'll go back and I'll tell that so the listeners on the radio could talk about that. But what's the number 1, 2, 3 things that you could do for your brain? Number 1 is to be social. Number 2 is to walk. Number 3 is to get your eyes up and move them back and forth. Now, do I think the knee is going to get worse when you don't walk? I think the answer to that question, that is yes. Hang on, let me get us back. Okay, everybody, this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's Monday, April 29th, and we're back live right here. And let's talk about the knees. So let's talk about degenerative knee, degeneration in the knee, osteoarthritis, whatever you want to call it, right? My knee is bone on bone. Okay, bone on bone is not the problem. Bone on bone is the scapegoat to the problem. Bone on bone doesn't mean that your knee hurts. Your knee hurts when it malfunctions. Are there any knees on the planet that are bone on bone that function properly? And I'm going to say that the answer to that question is yes. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, okay. So it's bone on bone. Just because it's bone on bone doesn't mean it hurts. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that walking is vitally important to your brain. So I got to figure out a way to get on my feet. I got to figure out a way to get on my feet and walk. And if I don't get on my feet and walk, then I'm going to get myself on a recumbent bike. If I'm trying to get exercise from a recumbent bike, and if I think that exercise is cardio, then the recumbent bike becomes an alternative to walking. If I understand that exercise is neuro, not cardio, then I got to get on my feet and I got to move. I got to figure out how to get that pressure on my feet so that I can fire the receptors in my feet, knees, and hips into my brain so that it can give my brain enough power to make the right decision to set my body back into order. And I think if you don't do that, you're moving in the wrong direction. And I think swimming does the same thing to you. Swimming puts you vertical and it takes you out of gravity. And I think there's some things in swimming that swimming creates. You can get fit swimming. I'm not saying swimmers aren't fit by any means. What I'm saying is if you want to increase brain function, get on your feet and walk. But just start the process in the brain. And also work on your diet, because it's the two things that have to do with degeneration is abnormal movement and abnormal chemistry. And if you've got too much inflammation in your diet, in your body is going to create a degenerative joint situation all throughout your body. We've talked about that a lot, but is there a difference between the two? I think there's a difference between the two. Am I saying that a recumbent bike is worse than nothing? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that a recumbent bike is worse than nothing. I'm saying that if I had to choose between walking and getting on a recumbent bike, I would use the walking. I would figure out a way to walk, even if I had to, for a very short time, do that. But it's just so important to the brain. That's the guy that works for the tech company that we were trying to talk about standing up. He's got so much thoracic issue and so much inflammation in his thoracic spine, and his neck is reversed, and he's just got some issues. And it's like, dude, it will help us if we can get you on your feet and walk. So it'd be great if you would take your what do they call it? The little treadmill. That Kim's got one of them. A little treadmill that you could set right up underneath your desk and just do some walking while you're working on the computer. Okay. So do I think there's a difference between walking and a recumbent bike? Yes, I think walking is better. Do I think you should stop walking in order to save your knee from degenerating worse? And I think the answer to that question is no. I think your knee is going to degenerate worse when you stop walking than it will when you're walking. Your brain is going to degenerate when you quit walking, which is going to cause your knee to be worse in the long run. It might help you in the very short run, but it's not going to help you in the long run. Decrease your sugar, increase your anti-inflammatories, decrease your omega-6s, increase your fish oil. Those are the things that I would do. Not anti-inflammatory drugs. One of my patients told me one time she has RA and they didn't want her to. She had to keep her immune system weak. That she couldn't do any supplements that helped her immune system function better. That is the wrong place to me too. That's the wrong direction to go. That doesn't even make any sense. Now, am I treating RA? Absolutely not. Am I treating these diseases? No, I'm not treating any of that stuff. I'm putting the body in an environment that's congruent with health and to help the body work. Another conversation I had today was about smoking, and a person had quit smoking. And I said, how'd you do that? And his wife was there, and they said, well, we made a deal that if he quit smoking, he could get a new pickup. And I said, okay. And so he did. He got the new pickup, and he hasn't smoked in 3 weeks. And I was like, boy, uh-oh. Let me just tell you, that's not big enough to solve that problem. And I didn't say them in that words, but that's what I was thinking in my head. I'm like, you are fixing that when the new smell runs off of that pickup truck and you're not getting enough dopamine from that, then you're going to run into a problem on the other side of that. And so I had to explain to him right side, left side, adrenaline, dopamine. Why did you start smoking in the first place? How old were you? How long have you been smoking? I've been smoking since I was like a teenager. Like late teens, early 20s is when I started smoking. Okay. Why did you start smoking? Why did you start down that pathway? Yeah. And then what happened to the receptors in the downregulation of the left hemisphere? You got worse, and so you had to keep it going, and that's where you get your dopamine from. You created an external source of dopamine, and now you're on that pattern right there. And I think you guys that have been listening to the show for a long enough time, I think you all get that. And I'll do the short version. I won't break it all down like we usually do. I'll just do the short version of it tonight, just so you can just remember it. Just remember it. And I'll just make it nice and easy, and I'll split it in half. There's right side, there's left side of brain. Just split your brain in the right side and left side. Okay? Remember, right side to left side, and adrenaline, dopamine. Those are just very, very elementary ways of trying to explain this. So, why would we look for an external source of dopamine? Why would we need it? We would need it because we're not getting enough internal source of dopamine. And I should probably explain this to you. This is my education right here. This is my understanding of this process. This is not, I mean, I can go ahead and I'll put my signature on this deal right here. I'll put my initials on it because this is my understanding based on 24 years of studying it, that if we could figure this out right here, then we could figure out our problems and we could be healthy. So what did he do? He started smoking somewhere along the way. Okay. Then what happened? He started to downregulate the receptors. So there's receptors on the cell. There's a lot of receptors for dopamine because in nature you don't get a lot of it. So you got to have lots of receptors so that you can get it. If you see it, you can have it. And so there's a lot of receptors right there. They're all waiting for the dopamine. But what happens when we hit those receptors with massive amounts of dopamine in relationship to what they're supposed to be hit with? When we hit them with massive amounts of dopamine in that relationship, then it sets us off. It's like, whoa, that's too much. That's too much. So what is the cell going to do? The cell is going to downregulate the receptors. It's going to take those off the cell wall. It's going to take them off, and now you're not going to have as many receptors. So in order to have the same amount, I don't know if I could do this in some sort of formula. So the number of receptors is equal to the experience of the dopamine, maybe. I don't know. If this number goes up, and you're going to try to keep that constant, if this number goes up, if your dopamine goes up and you're trying to keep the other side of the equation constant, that's probably not a very good one. It's probably not written out right. Then you have to regulate the number of receptors. Is really my point. And so he's downregulated the number of receptors because he's driven that dopamine pattern so long. So what did he do to fix the problem? He fixed the problem by buying a pickup truck. Well, how does that solve this problem right here? You're going to have to get a pickup truck. It's going to have to create a lot of receptors for you in order for you to feel equally as good as your cigarettes. And I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's a big enough issue right there to get, from a neurological standpoint, to give you the stuff that you need in order to get you to be feeling good about yourself. Because I think that pickup truck's going to wear off, and then it's going to cause you some problems. You're going to have to deal with those problems, right? So if you can reset that, and he's already done 3 weeks, so he's almost there. If you can get in that 4 to 6 range, what will happen is he will actually start to regrow and reestablish the number of receptors on the cell wall. They'll come back. And when they come back, now you don't have to have near as much dopamine in order to get that same experience. And if you can get some of it from an internal source. So one of the questions we talked about was, how do I do that? And I know it's the same deal. Go be social. That's the first thing. Number 2, walk. I would actually say to myself, I'm going to walk myself out of this addiction. I'm going to drive it and drive it and drive it until I've got it. Because the more that I walk, the more that I fire. This becomes more firing pattern into that right hemisphere, which trips it over and kicks it over to the left. And then I have natural amounts of dopamine instead of external sources of dopamine. That's my theory about how it works. I think there's valid. I can make that argument. So one of the things he said is, I said, go for a walk, get your eyes up and move your eyes back and forth, right? All the things that we've talked about for a long time. The other one was the cold therapy. Cold water immersion. That's the Wim Hof book. Let me see. I think I got it right there. Yeah, Wim Hof. The Wim Hof method. This is the guy that taught me about all that stuff. And you guys, if you don't know who that is, or I haven't explained it to you in a little while. This is the guy that explained it to me, and then Dr. Huberman explained it to me in the increase. What do we get when we get into cold immersion? Well, cold immersion brings us a 540%. 540% increase in adrenaline. We drive the right hemisphere so hard with all that adrenaline that it spills over to the left, and we get a 3 to 4 hour, I think that's what it was, increase in dopamine from cold immersion. That's what I think is that's the mechanism. No one's told me that. I just had to piece it together. And that's why I keep doing this same conversation over and over and over again, because you just have to piece it together to understand it. You have to take this information from one person, and you have to listen to the pieces that you're missing, and then you have to take that information from the other person and then take the pieces that you're missing, and then eventually you'll start to see the whole thing come together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. We start a jigsaw puzzle by working around the edges, right? We look for all of the pieces that have a straight edge, and then we try to make our frame, and then build through them as we're working off of that. It just kind of builds itself back, and then all of a sudden you see the picture. It's like, oh, it took a lot of those pieces in order to see the picture. Well, this is one of those things that you just like, okay, I see the picture. Huberman said Wim Hof was trying to tell me he got rid of his depression because he got in the cold. He didn't have any idea how he did that. This dude's not a scientist. He's just a guy, and he's a really cool guy, it seems to me like. But he's not a scientist. He didn't understand. He's not a neurologist. He just knew there was something about being in the cold that made him feel better. And so he would go get in the cold when he felt bad, and he got rid of his anxiety and his depression by getting in the cold. But then, so now I'm like, okay, I got a guy that's trying to tell me that he solved his problem by getting in the cold. How did that work? And then Huberman said, hey, they did a study and said they found 3 to 4 hours of increase. I'll have to go back and find it to see exactly what it was. But there's an increase of dopamine in the left hemisphere after being in cold water. And I'm like, that's where it goes back to understanding and loving the master and his emissary. That's my other one. And I'll probably knock, like I always do, and knock these books all over just like that. Okay, yeah. So the master and his emissary. The master and his emissary book was the one that taught me the right hemisphere, left hemisphere. Now you can stack them. Now you can stack this with that little piece and saying, okay, I got to drive through, get it out of my brain. I got to get it out of the right over to the left. I got to have enough power up and to the right. I got to get on my feet to drive myself to health. Those are the things. Then we get into, I don't even have the book up here, but Robert Lustig will get into that whole dopamine pattern problem. And I know we've done about 86 shows on this whole subject right here, but I talked about it again today. And it was like, well, what should I do with my knee degeneration problem? Well, what do you think is going to happen if you don't get on your feet and move? If you don't get on your feet and move, do you think your knees are going to get better or worse? I'm going to tell you that more than likely, if you don't get on your feet and move, your knees are going to get worse. Even if creating some problems, even if creating some pressure on your knees when you walk is a problem, I would just share with you based on my experience that if you don't get up and move, your body does not move towards health. Your body moves away from health. I think that's a pretty good answer right there to what you should do. Get up and move your feet. See if I can put these back together without causing a problem. There we go. So those are two of the things that we talked about today. One of them was the knee problem. One of them was and then we had the whole Botox thing and the nerve burning problem. And then another one was the cold immersion. That went along with the smoking problem. And I think it helps to do those things all mapped out together. So there was a couple more conversations. See how much time I got. I got about 6 minutes left. I don't know which one of these that I want to cover the most. There were the anxiety and depression one. The anxiety one goes right along with that same thing that I just talked about. So I don't think we have to talk about that as much. Just remember that anxiety, the right hemisphere spends its time looking for the negative thing. It's looking for the threat. So it's always suspicious. It's always on the outlook for the threat. And if you let your right hemisphere dominate, you'll be depressed or have anxiety. That's what we've learned over the years. And that was one other sentence that just came to me. One of my guys said that, man, the technology that we have today versus what we had, because I was telling him about our new neurofeedback brain mapping QEEG technology that we have in the office, and I'm so excited about getting that started. If you, I'll try to get you some information on that if you're interested in it. But that's something that we just started. But I said, yeah, I know it. When I had my license, none of this stuff. When I got my license 20 years ago, none of this stuff was available. They didn't teach us anything about brain mapping and QEEGs. And there was the neurology part of it has developed and continued to go forward. So I don't think it's necessarily common knowledge. It was super cool because one of my patients was telling me this morning that their son or somebody's graduating from one of the local Christian schools here in town, and the the senior class has to do a thesis, which I was really excited about. That I thought that was super cool. That if you're if you're a senior, you have to write a thesis and you have to present your thesis to the public, and the parents can come watch. It's like a whole contest, and they make those seniors do that. And she said it was really cool because there was one of them was talking about dopamine, another one was talking about the brain and how important the brain is, and the different parts of the brain and all that. And these are seniors in high school. And I think that's just just really awesome, that we talk about that more people are talking about the brain. And I don't know necessarily where I was going with that, but it was just that some of the technology that we have, right, with the QEEG, that's what I was talking about, was that technology gives us a chance to look at and see how your brain is functioning at a way that we couldn't do it before. And I think that's what technology does. It gives me, same thing with x-ray. We couldn't see what your bones look like until we x-rayed them. And then now we see, oh, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And blood work and there's a lot of stuff that has developed over the years. But now we're really getting an understanding to a certain extent about how this brain is firing and how important it is. And it's the fundamentals of health as far as I'm concerned. Hang on one second. We got a text. Let me see if I can answer this question. Shoulder degeneration. Yeah. Is shoulder degeneration the same as the knee degeneration? Yes. The shoulder degeneration, it's degeneration is abnormal movement and abnormal chemistry. Don't forget those two things. If you could just be as simple as possible and break it down, it's abnormal movement and abnormal chemistry. It's not just abnormal movement by itself. And when I say it's abnormal chemistry, what am I talking about? When I'm talking about abnormal chemistry, I'm talking about your inflammatory state. Or I could just read you like one of the things right here this is in my Guyton Physiology book, which was one of my favorite books when I was in chiropractic school. Kind of makes me a nerd. But it says growth hormone stimulates cartilage and bone growth. Although growth hormone stimulates increased deposition of protein and increased growth in almost all tissues of the body, its most obvious effects is to increase growth of the skeletal frame. So that's just one sentence out of this whole paragraph. But the title is Growth Hormone Stimulates Cartilage. Growth hormone stimulates cartilage. How are you going to get your growth hormone? See, if we were to map this out and we were to reverse engineer that and say what stimulates growth hormone, I bet you if we looked in our Spark book that we would find out that exercise stimulates growth hormone. Then exercise stimulates growth hormone. Then exercise stimulates cartilage in the knee. So should I exercise the knee? There you go. I think you should. That's all we got for you tonight. This is the end of the show, and it was a good weekend, and I hope you guys have a great week. Text me if there's anything you want to know that I can help you with. And otherwise, we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6. Have a great day.